frankly, often brutal history of how we've treated mental illness. And it's a story that kicks off with what was once called a miracle cure.
Our story starts in a very specific year, 1949. So, what was so important about this particular moment in time?
Well, in 1949, the entire medical world was celebrating this incredible, revolutionary breakthrough. A Portuguese doctor had supposedly found a cure for mental illness. And get this, he was awarded the Nobel Prize for it, the highest honor in medicine. But what exactly was this miracle treatment?
That celebrated cure was the lobotomy, and the procedure was, well, horrifyingly simple. A sharp tool, basically an ice pick, was hammered up through a patient's eye socket to just scramble the connections in the front of their brain. This was hailed as genius, and believe it or not, this is just one chapter in a very, very dark history.
I know, the idea that an ice pick to the brain could win a Nobel Prize sounds absolutely insane to us now. But to understand how we got to a point like that, we have to go way back. Back to a time when madness wasn't seen as a disease, but as a curse.
For thousands of years, the go-to treatment was something called trepanation. The thinking was pretty straightforward. If you were hearing voices or feeling a deep sense of despair, you must have evil spirits trapped inside your head. The solution? Drill a hole in your skull to let them out. And the wildest part? Archaeologists have found 5,000-year-old skulls that show signs of healing, which means some people actually survived this.
So this timeline gives you a roadmap of where we're headed. We've just talked about trepanation, and next we're going to see the very first shift towards something a little more scientific, though still pretty misguided.
So, around 400 BC, the Greek physician Hippocrates came along with this totally revolutionary idea. Maybe madness wasn't caused by demons, but by biology. He came up with the theory of the four humors, basically four fluids in the body, and thought imbalances were the cause. His treatment was bloodletting. And yeah, barbaric to us, but this was a huge shift. The first time the pendulum swung away from the supernatural and toward the biological. But that pendulum, it was about to swing back hard.
For the next 1,500 years, the world basically went backward. By the Middle Ages, that old belief in demonic possession was back in full force, and society's solution was to just lock the mentally ill away in places that were, well, they were more like prisons than hospitals.
Life inside London's infamous Bethlem Royal Hospital, better known as Bedlam, was pure torture. This wasn't a place for healing, it was a human zoo, where for a small fee, you could pay to come and gawk at the suffering. The very word we use for chaos, bedlam, literally comes from the horrors that went on inside these walls.
This just went on for centuries, until a French doctor named Philippe Pinel did something that, at the time, was totally radical. In the late 1700s, he unchained the patients. He actually believed that kindness and dignity could be a form of therapy. And you know what? He proved that kindness could be a powerful medicine. A lot of his patients actually got better. But here's the thing. Compassion was expensive, and as asylums got more and more overcrowded, the cruelty just crept back in.
All right, let's jump forward to the early 20th century. Doctors now had all these new tools from biology and surgery, and they were really eager to experiment directly on the brain. The only problem was they had almost no clue what they were actually doing.
First up was insulin coma therapy. The idea was to inject patients with massive doses of insulin, putting them into a coma, hoping that when they woke up, their brain would be sort of reset. The reality? It often caused seizures, brain damage, and sometimes even death. And yet, it was used for decades.
Then came metrazole shock therapy. A drug was injected that caused these violent, bone-breaking seizures. Patients who went through it described it as the single most terrifying experience of their entire lives. But because some patients' symptoms sometimes improved afterward, they just kept doing it. A pretty brutal example of the ends justifying the means.
And that brings us right back to the lobotomy. An American doctor named Walter Freeman perfected that ice pick method and then traveled the country in a van he called the lobotomobile, performing over 3,000 of these procedures himself. One of his most famous patients was Rosemary Kennedy, JFK's sister, who was left permanently incapacitated at just 23 years old. Then, in the 1950s, everything changed. For the very first time, there was a glimmer of real, actual hope. And it didn't come from a scalpel or a seizure, but from chemistry. The discovery of chloropromazine, the first real antipsychotic drug, was an absolute game changer. For the first time, medications could actually manage severe symptoms. This led to a new policy of deinstitutionalization, and as you can see from this chart, the result was dramatic. The massive populations of state mental hospitals just plummeted. Patients were finally being set free.
But there was a massive, massive problem. We released patients from asylums into communities that had zero resources to support them. Thousands ended up homeless or in jail. The crisis didn't go away, it just moved from the hospitals to the streets and prisons. And the drugs, they weren't a cure. They just managed symptoms, often with their own severe side effects.
So where does all of this leave us today? I mean, we've come an incredibly long way from chains and ice picks for sure. But the field of psychiatry is still grappling with some really fundamental questions about the mind.
Today's toolkit is way more sophisticated. We've got effective talk therapies like CBT, much more targeted medications, and way safer forms of brain stimulation. And brand new research into psychedelics is showing some incredible promise. The progress is absolutely undeniable.
But here's the really uncomfortable truth in all of this. Every single generation of doctors thought they were advanced, and every single generation was proven wrong about something absolutely fundamental. So it's almost a guarantee that 100 years from now, future generations are going to look back at our treatments and be shocked by how primitive we were. So this whole journey, from demons to drugs, from chains to chemistry, it reveals this really humbling pattern. Each era was totally convinced it had the answer, only to be proven horrifically wrong by the next. And that forces us to look in the mirror and confront a really critical question about our own time. This history forces us to ask, what are we championing right now that will be seen as barbaric in the future? Is it our over-reliance on antidepressants that for many people barely work better than a placebo? Is it medicating children instead of trying to address the root of their trauma? Histories strongly suggest we're getting something fundamental wrong right now. We just don't know what it is yet. And maybe, just maybe, the answer doesn't lie in the future, but in the past. You see, there is one treatment that's been used for thousands of years by cultures all over the world. It was banned for half a century because it was deemed dangerous. But now, cutting-edge neuroscience is bringing it back, and it's showing results that modern medicine often struggles to match. But the story of that treatment, well, that's for another explainer.